When the wreck of the SS Republic was located on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, it was supposed to be a closed story. The ship had sunk in 1865, near the end of the American Civil War, during a violent hurricane off the coast of Georgia. According to official manifests, it carried passengers, commercial cargo, and a shipment of gold coins intended for post-war reconstruction. Nothing unusual, at least on paper. More than a century later, when the wreck was finally found, expectations were modest. The assumption was simple: whatever gold had been on board was either minimal, scattered, or already accounted for in historical records. But once recovery began, something didn't align. According to documented recovery reports, thousands of gold coins were retrieved from the wreck. Many were in remarkable condition, preserved by the deep ocean environment. The discovery was widely reported, and the story seemed complete, until researchers compared what was recovered with what was originally supposed to be there. The numbers didn't match. Official records suggested a far larger shipment of gold than what was brought to the surface. Not slightly larger, significantly larger, enough to raise a quiet but persistent question: if the ship was found and some of the gold was recovered, where did the rest go? That question is why the story of the SS Republic never truly ended. The SS Republic was not carrying gold as a curiosity or a private fortune. It was carrying it as a tool. In the spring of 1865, the United States was emerging from the Civil War exhausted, divided, and financially strained. Banks in the South had collapsed. Credit was scarce. Physical currency, especially gold coinage, was urgently needed to restart trade and stabilize regional economies. According to Treasury records and contemporary shipping documents, the SS Republic was transporting a large shipment of gold coins, primarily U.S. double eagles, along with other specie intended for banks and businesses in the post-war South. This was not hidden cargo. It was logged, insured, and expected. The ship departed New York bound for New Orleans, carrying passengers, commercial goods, and this critical financial cargo. The journey itself was routine until it wasn't. Near the Georgia coast, the SS Republic encountered a powerful hurricane. Accounts from survivors describe chaos on deck, flooding below, and a rapid loss of control. Despite attempts to save the vessel, it sank quickly, taking much of its cargo with it. At the time, the loss was recorded as tragic but final. The gold was assumed to be unrecoverable, scattered, buried, or destroyed by the sea. Insurance claims were filed. The story moved on. What no one could have known then was that the cargo would one day resurface. Not all of it, but enough to reopen questions that had been closed for more than a century. Because when the wreck was located, the gold that emerged told only part of the story, and the part that remained missing was far more interesting. The SS Republic was not found by accident. It was located through a deliberate, methodical search that relied on modern deep-sea technology, historical research, and careful interpretation of survivor accounts. According to recovery reports, the wreck was identified more than 1,700 feet below the surface of the Atlantic Ocean, resting largely intact on the seabed. For researchers, this was a rare opportunity. Shipwrecks from the mid-19th century are often fragmented beyond recognition, but the SS Republic's depth had protected it from trawling, salvage interference, and severe biological decay. Large sections of the hull, cargo areas, and internal compartments were still recognizable. This immediately raised expectations. Text: if the ship was this well preserved, then the cargo, especially heavy gold coinage, should also be present nearby. Recovery operations confirmed part of that assumption. Thousands of gold coins were brought to the surface. Many were dated, catalogued, and later authenticated. Public announcements framed the discovery as a remarkable success, a Civil War-era shipwreck yielding long-lost treasure. But as documentation continued, a problem emerged. The recovered gold represented only a fraction of what official records suggested the ship had been carrying. According to comparisons between original cargo manifests, insurance valuations, and recovered material, a substantial portion of the shipment was unaccounted for. This wasn't speculation based on rumor. Text: it was a discrepancy based on numbers. The wreck had been found. The site had been surveyed. The recovery had been documented. And yet, a large quantity of gold simply wasn't there. At that point, the story of the SS Republic shifted. It stopped being a tale of discovery and became a question of absence. Once the recovery of the SS Republic began, attention shifted from discovery to accounting. According to historians and analysts who later reviewed the case, the problem wasn't that the gold was hard to locate. It was that the math refused to settle. Original shipping documents, insurance records, and Treasury-related correspondence all pointed to a shipment larger than what was ultimately recovered. Text: even allowing for losses during the sinking, coins scattered, buried, or damaged beyond recovery, the gap remained significant. Several explanations were proposed. One theory suggested that part of the gold was moved before the ship sank. Survivors reported chaos during the storm, and it was speculated that some cargo might have been jettisoned in an attempt to save the vessel. But this explanation raised its own problems. Gold coins are heavy. They are not easily moved during a hurricane, and no contemporaneous records mention such an action. Another theory proposed that the gold was stored in compartments that collapsed or became inaccessible after the sinking. But surveys of the wreck showed that many cargo areas were still identifiable. The ship had not been completely destroyed. Text: a third possibility was administrative error, that the original estimates were inflated or misrecorded, yet multiple independent documents supported similar figures. The discrepancy did not hinge on a single source. According to recovery specialists, this is what made the case unusual. Missing treasure stories often rely on vague records or second-hand accounts. The SS Republic did not. The ship was documented. The cargo was documented. The recovery was documented. And still, the absence remained. This did not mean the gold was stolen, hidden, or secretly recovered. It meant something simpler and more unsettling. The historical record was incomplete. Text: when historians and recovery experts stepped back from the speculation, one explanation began to stand out, not because it was dramatic, but because it fit the evidence best. According to maritime historians and salvage analysts, the most likely fate of the missing gold is dispersion. When the SS Republic sank during the hurricane, the ship did not descend gently. Survivors described violent motion, flooding, and structural stress. In such conditions, cargo does not remain neatly stored. Containers break, compartments fail, heavy objects move unpredictably. Gold coins are dense, but they are also small. If containers ruptured during the sinking, coins could have spilled across the seabed, rolled into sediment, or being carried into areas that later surveys could not fully access. Text over more than a century, shifting currents and accumulating layers of sand could have buried them beyond practical recovery. This explanation lacks drama. There is no theft, no secret salvage, no hidden vault, just physics, time, and the limitations of recovery technology. And yet, this explanation leaves an uncomfortable residue, because even if dispersion accounts for some of the missing gold, it does not fully explain the scale of the discrepancy. Surveys covered large areas. Advanced imaging mapped the wreck site carefully. The quiet answer explains most of the loss, but not all of it, which is why the story never fully settles. The SS Republic sits in a narrow space between resolution and uncertainty. Enough was found to confirm the historical record. Text enough is missing to prevent closure, and in that space, questions persist. The recovery of the SS Republic relied on technology that would have seemed impossible when the ship first sank. High-resolution sonar mapped the seabed. Remotely operated vehicles descended more than 1,000 feet. Cameras recorded compartments that had not been seen since 1865. And yet, even with these tools, limits remained. According to deep-sea recovery specialists, locating objects on the ocean floor is not the same as retrieving them. Sonar can identify large structures, but small, dense objects, like individual gold coins, behave differently. Once they leave their original containers, they stop looking like cargo and start looking like geology. A coin buried under sediment does not announce itself. Text a cluster scattered across uneven terrain blends into noise. A layer of sand only a few inches thick can erase clear signals. This is where technology reaches its boundary. Recovery teams can survey what is exposed. They can excavate selectively, but they cannot realistically strip an entire wreck site down to bare bedrock. The cost, time, and environmental impact make that impossible. So the missing gold exists in a gray zone, not hidden by secrecy, not protected by lore, but shielded by scale. The ocean does not lock things away behind doors. It dissolves them into context. What remains of the SS Republic is not a single location waiting to be emptied. It is a field, complex, layered, and only partially readable text, and that means some answers may already be present on the seabed, indistinguishable from everything around them. Over time, the story of the SS Republic stopped being only about missing gold. It became a case study. According to maritime historians, the wreck represents a rare intersection of documentation, discovery, and limitation. Unlike many treasure stories, this one has records on both ends, what was supposed to be on board and what was actually recovered. That makes the gap more meaningful. The SS Republic shows that even when history is well documented, resolution is not guaranteed. Ships can be found, cargo can be identified, technology can reach depths once thought impossible, and still, certainty can remain out of reach. Text this challenges a common assumption that enough effort will always produce a complete answer. The SS Republic suggests otherwise. It shows that some losses are not dramatic events, but gradual dispersals that resist reconstruction. In this sense, the ship is not a mystery because something was hidden. It is unresolved because complex systems rarely fail cleanly. Storms do not preserve order. Sinking does not respect manifests. And time does not preserve intent. The SS Republic reminds us that history often survives in fragments, not conclusions. The missing gold of the SS Republic matters not because of its monetary value. It matters because of what it represents. Text. According to historians who study maritime losses, most shipwrecks from the 19th century fall into one of two categories. Either they are lost entirely, or they are found with little expectation of completeness. The SS Republic sits uncomfortably between those outcomes. Enough was recovered to prove the ship's identity. Enough was recovered to confirm the nature of its cargo. Enough was recovered to reopen the historical record, but not enough to close it. This partial resolution creates a different kind of significance. It forces historians and researchers to confront the limits of reconstruction. Even with manifests, insurance documents, survivor testimony, and modern technology, the past does not always yield a clean answer. Text. The missing gold matters because it shows how fragile certainty can be. When we say a ship carried a specific amount of gold, we are really saying that people once believed it did. When we recover part of that cargo, we confirm the belief, but we also expose how much remains dependent on assumption. The SS Republic demonstrates that history is not a ledger waiting to be balanced. It is a process of approximation, and sometimes approximation is the closest we will ever come to truth. When news of the SS Republic recovery became public, the story shifted again. What began as a technical success quickly turned into a discussion, not about what was found, but about what was missing. Text. According to contemporary media coverage and public records, reports emphasized the number of coins recovered, their condition, and their historical significance. But readers and observers focused on a different detail: the comparison between recovered gold and the amounts listed in original documents. That comparison invited interpretation. Some saw the discrepancy as proof that more remained to be found. Others argued it demonstrated the unreliability of 19th century record-keeping. A few suggested alternative explanations, not accusations, but possibilities shaped by uncertainty. This is how the SS Republic entered a modern space that older shipwrecks never reached. It became a debate rather than a discovery. In earlier eras, shipwreck stories ended when the sea claimed them. Text. In the modern era, recovery invites scrutiny. Numbers are checked. Assumptions are challenged. Silence becomes a problem that demands explanation. The SS Republic did not fail to provide answers. It provided partial answers, which can be harder to accept, because partial answers force us to live with ambiguity, and ambiguity invites conversation long after the recovery teams have left. The SS Republic was never meant to become an unresolved story. From a technical perspective, it should have been straightforward. The ship was identified. The wreck was documented. A large quantity of gold was recovered, authenticated, and catalogued. By most historical standards, that would be considered a complete recovery. But completion depends on excitation. Text. According to historians, the SS Republic unsettles us because it violates a quiet assumption that finding something should end the question, that recovery should produce certainty. Instead, it produced comparison: manifests versus seabed, assurance values versus recovered weight, what was written versus what was lifted. And those comparisons did not reconcile. This does not mean the gold was stolen, hidden, or deliberately removed. It means that loss does not always occur as a single event. It can happen gradually, mechanically, without intention, through rupture, dispersion, burial, and time. The SS Republic teaches that recovery is not reversal. Finding a wreck does not rewind the moment it sank. Text it only reveals fragments of a process that unfolded chaotically and left no clean edges behind. Some losses are not mysteries because something was concealed. They are unresolved because the world does not preserve order when it breaks. The story of the SS Republic is not about a missing fortune. It is about the limits of certainty. A ship was found, gold was recovered, history was confirmed and questioned at the same time. The missing gold remains significant not because of its value, but because it reminds us that even the best records, the best technology, and the best intentions cannot always reconstruct the past completely. Some stories remain unfinished not because they resist discovery, but because they were never whole to begin with. Text if you appreciate calm, documented stories about real treasures and the quiet reasons they remain unresolved. Consider subscribing to the channel. This project is still growing, and reaching the first 1,000 subscribers is an important milestone for me. Your support truly matters. And before you go, consider this question: when enough is found to confirm the story, but not enough to close it, does the truth lie in what's missing, or in what we choose to accept?